government's reckless spending and mismanagement of the national economy is causing inflation. And now on top of that, they want to tax this inflation. So this is how it works. Somebody buys a capital property, let's say a commercial warehouse for their business, and over time the price goes up because of inflation. And when they sell that property, that capital asset, then there's a tax to pay on that capital gain. So it's really a tax on inflation. It's always been deemed to be unfair, but Canada made the compromise by saying, well, we'll put only half that capital gain into a person's income and then tax at their marginal tax rate. Is it fair? No, but it's been accepted. Now, this government, on account of their incompetence, doesn't even know how to balance the budget in good times, as in the first 4 years of their administration, 2014 to 2019. Times of full employment, the economy was good government revenues, low interest rates. Even then, they could not balance the budget. Now, the Liberals were lulled into a sense of complacency because of low interest rates, and it was spend till the cows came home. Well, eventually the cows did come home. March 2020, with the pandemic, and all hell broke loose. Deficit spending, borrowing, quantitative easing like we've never seen before in Canadian history, and very predictably, inflation followed. Too many dollars chasing too few goods and services. The law of supply and demand, like the law of gravity, never changes. And the middle class that this government had promised to help is suffering on account of this inflation. Look at the cost of housing, the cost of groceries, the cost of transportation. So what does this socialist government do? Well, they attack the wealthy, of course. That's what they always like to do. The Minister of Finance, introducing a capital gain tax increase, said that they were asking the wealthiest 0.13% just to pay a little bit more. Now, many Canadians are finding out to their surprise that they are part of this elite group of Canada's wealthiest. Like hardworking Karen in my riding, who runs a retail store very successfully. She bought her own commercial strata unit to save for her retirement. Now, if she sells that for $500,000 more than she bought it, and in these inflationary times that is completely realistic, with the new rules, the capital gains inclusion rules, her tax bill will be $40,000 higher than it would have been under the old rules in Canada for many, many years. So my question, I'm going to restate to the Liberals, is will the Liberals keep their promise, keep the Minister of Finance's promise that only the top 0.13% of income earners will be taxed? And will they leave ordinary, hardworking entrepreneurs like Karen alone? Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. If I could just start off before I maybe expand on it, just to make it very clear, as of June 25, 2024, the capital gains inclusion rate will increase from 1/2 to 2/3 on capital gains realized annually above $250,000 by individuals and on capital gains realized by corporations and most types of trust. We're talking about $250,000 annually in one given year. And it doesn't surprise me that the Conservative Party does not recognize the value by saying for those that are having that sort of profit to expect a little bit more is to say that it's not fair. I don't think is appropriate. You know, the Conservatives voted against. When we came back in 2015, we put a special tax on the 1% wealthiest in Canada, and the Conservatives opposed that also. I think at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, we have, I believe, supported Canada's middle class in a very tangible and real way. Again, I would go back to the time in which we decreased the tax for Canada's middle class. Again, the Conservatives voted against that. We brought in programs to support Canada's middle class and those aspiring to become a part of that middle class, and even looking at ways in which we can support others. At the end of the day, when the member makes reference to issues like inflation, Canada, in comparison to virtually every other industrialized country has done exceptionally well. Doesn't mean that we sit back, because we haven't done that. We've recognized that we need to support Canadians, even though our economy in many ways was doing better than other countries around the world. We did that through things such as the grocery rebate. The members of his caucus often make reference to seniors. We have supported seniors in, again, very tangible ways, whether it was the increase to the GIS a number of years ago of a substantial amount, to the increase of a substantial amount to 75 and over. In many ways, the government has been there to support Canadians. We continue to look at ways in which we can do that, Madam Speaker, and dealing with a bigger holistic approach at dealing with the economy. We have now seen interest rates drop first in the G7 countries. We have seen inflation rates now under control. And again, all I would suggest to the member is take a look at the world environment, whether it was the economic slowdown or the pandemic. No country was exempted from it. We all had to play a role. The government here in Canada, in working with Canadians in other jurisdictions, and we're speaking of provinces and territories and Indigenous leaders, we have been able to minimize the negative impact of what's been happening around the world. And yes, there are some areas in which we need to increase revenue, and I think that this is a fair way of doing it. We obviously disagree with the Conservatives. I can say, Madam Speaker, and you'll recall, when we first came out with the announcement, the Conservatives sat on their hands and said nothing, because it took them a while before they actually decided, okay, here's the position we're going to be taking. So it took them a while to adopt their position. I would suggest that they might want to go back to the drawing board on it.
Aldergrove.
Well, I'd like to thank the Parliamentary Secretary for his comments. I've got really three comments in response. He said, oh, you know, a capital gain is a profit. It's not really a profit, it's inflation. Profit is when you work hard and earn income based on what you're selling, but it's just it's inflation. If the person had to buy another asset, it would cost that much more, so it's not profit at all. Secondly, he said, well, you know, compared to other countries, we're doing pretty good. Well, our real estate inflation is way worse than it is in the United States. And thirdly, our GDP per capita, which is the best measure, the most reliable measure of national wealth, lags substantially behind the United States. And one of the reasons is because we are sending investment dollars to the U.S. instead of keeping it here in Canada, and increasing the capital gains tax does not help that.